Hey guys, welcome back, and this topic is going to be a little bit more heavy than usual, and I've honestly avoided it up until now, mainly due to the fact that I just don't have a whole lot of personal experience or knowledge about the man in general, and there's a lot of people who feel very, very strongly, one way or the other, about his passing. But we're going to just try to ease our way through this. We're going to just do what we can to present what we know at face value, and I'll let you guys make up your own determination about how you feel about what you think of the situation. So, if you don't know what I'm referring to, Ed Piskor, who is a cartoonist, YouTuber, by all accounts, pretty accomplished guy, ended his life on April 1st at age 41. Now, unfortunately for him, there were some leaked DMs and screenshots that painted him in a less than flattering light. People seemingly, came to the conclusion that he was grooming somebody who at the time was 17 years old. Again, it's a very gross, weird situation. I don't want to get into it. Personally, I think it's kind of gross. And on the other side, it's like, well, I also think it's kind of gross that in many states, including the one I live in, 16 is the age of consent, but that is legal. So I'm like, I find the whole thing just kind of, I don't know how to feel about any of it. That being said, these are allegations. These were things that were piled on. And unfortunately, whether he did anything illegal, immoral, criminal, that will never really be determined because he is now gone. And so there's no day in court for Ed. He has ended his life, and now the world has to move on and basically come to their own decision about what kind of guy he was. And we've seen some really tragic statements released, especially from his brother here. Started off saying, quoting Ed's note that he left behind, saying that he was murdered by internet bullies. And that's really what it comes down to. And again, I'm not justifying if Ed was into some stuff that was not okay. I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying at face value, it's just a really rough situation all the way around. And I've dealt with family members, my in-laws, losing somebody to the same situation. Maybe the circumstances were different, but somebody choosing to end their own life. And it's a mess. It's an awful, awful situation. You're left feeling like, what could we have done? How could we have changed it? And everyone's going to kind of try to grieve and process it in their own way, unfortunately. But George Alexopoulos pointing out here that the cancel pigs have ended someone's life, and that's, unfortunately, it seems to be the situation here. And of course, he's like, these hypocrites all know what kind of twisted things at their comic conventions happen as well, but all the things they accused him of, they do every year and worse. And that's very, very, I think, a valid point by George Alexopoulos here. A lot of times people who screech the loudest are the ones who are guilty of said actions and conduct. Leland Bjerg here says, Ed Piskor is dead because the online comics community is eager to socially savage, harmless, talented nerds who are at the worst awkward with women to earn internet points. Again, I don't know that he was innocent, but I'm not going to go make claims about somebody I didn't know. All I know is, he says here, trial by public opinion is gross, and I 100% agree with that. I think that right there is a very valid point. Now, here's where you get into more of the responses to this, and this is more what I wanted to talk about, because this is devolving into a gigantic mess. You have John Malin, I think is how you pronounce his name. Maybe it's Malin. Somebody can correct me in the comments. To my knowledge, he's another comic book creator, YouTuber. I honestly don't know what he does. I don't follow him, so I don't know. I legitimately don't know who he is, other than I see him on Twitter. He goes on here to say, Ed Piskor is dead. Cancel culture is a terrible thing. Everyone's innocent until proven guilty. And again, I agree with all those things. I do think some of the things Ed said were kind of weird, kind of creepy, but that's not a crime. He goes on to talk about women that have accused men of things and lost jobs and had their reputation ruined by it. And that's a very, very, very valid point. But then it went weird. He goes, man, if I blew my brains out, maybe Nerdrotics and Yellow Flash would finally express outrage for the C2E2 canceling us like the Whisper Network canceled Ed Piskor. What he's referring to here is this article here from Fandom Pulse talking about how this convention revoked that Star Wars girl, her press pass. They also removed Ethan Van Sciver, John Malin, and Shane Davis. A bunch of pretty well-known YouTubers and comic book artists. And, it's devolved further into this Comicsgate civil war that we've seen. You have him saying here, you know, pretty sure Yellow Flash wasn't happy with Ethan for whatever reason, kicked him from his Flashcast room, claiming he wasn't on his show frequently enough. It's just devolving into the same mess we've seen with all these guys all fighting, all this drama between different YouTubers. This guy here, Cam, calling him out, saying coward who sits by nodding for whatever his master tells him, or joining cancel pick behavior, shaming comic group creators, now wants to pretend he's the victim. I did speak out against the banning, but get the F out, you pathetic hypocrite. See, this is just the stuff that I think is the fallout of what happened with Ed, because unfortunately, battle lines are not clearly drawn in these situations. A lot of people feel strongly about a certain person based on remarks they make or based on the perceived allegiance they have to a YouTuber or a comic book creator, and then you just pick sides, and then all of a sudden you've got allies who are enemies and enemies who are allies, and it just becomes a mess. You have Ripperverse Goalpost here, who's a Ripperverse Stan account, essentially, for Eric July and Ripperverse Comics, you know, mocking the Quartering for saying, I don't know this individual, but if you got a beef with a YouTuber, maybe don't stand on a dead dude's body for, 12 hours after he ended his own life, talking about John Malin. And he points out that the Quartering knows exactly who John Malin is. Then, of course, the Quartering and Ethan Van Sciver are going at it. Apparently, they have quite the past, calling each other, hypocrites or whatever for not having each other's back, or feeling like one of them owes the other one. It's just a mess. EVS had a video on Ed Piskor that he privated. Maybe he felt like he was piling on. I don't know. And you got Sid Alpha here pointing out that, the Zoe Quinn allegations, were a prime example of things that were found out to be complete BS as well. And talking about, that umbrella guy saying men being driven to suicide over accusations is called male fragility by the media. And the prime example that nobody takes the idea of men's mental health seriously. For whatever reason, they feel like men just suck it up and take it, but then they're also like, don't be a toxic man. Well, if a guy is going to suck up all the crap from the course of his day, from his week, from his life, and isn't allowed to talk about it, and at some points be vulnerable, then you're basically like, well, these guys are going to be ticking time bombs. Shit like this is going to happen. You got people like Renfamous, another one of these horrible, awful people in the comics industry, making this about, her, saying anyone in the comic space right now using the phrase mob mentality is not a safe person and everyone should be taking notes. And this was on the day that Ed ended his life. But again, that umbrella guy here points out that Ed Piskor named specific comic pros that drove him to what he did, says these same morons targeted many others and the comic industry allows or even applauds it. It really is the worst industry out there. Worst pros, there's no comparison. And honestly, looking as a non-comic consumer from the outside in, this is definitely seems to be the case that there are so many awful, awful people in this industry. And yeah, he names Alex Campi down here, Daryl Io Braithwaite, hopefully I said that right. This guy apparently called it a kill shot. Ramon Villalobos, Cam Del Rosario, JB Rowe, Molly Wright. All these people are mentioned in the note that he left behind. And Yellow Flash points that out. And again, I'm not on anybody's side. I follow a lot of these creators. I don't get in the middle of this whole Comicsgate Civil War thing because I'm not part of Comicsgate. So now, today, we have an article talking about how Alex DeCampi, the one who was mentioned in the note, is breaking her silence and retweeting a tweet saying how hard it is for women to come forward against men in the comic industry. And this is just the kind of weirdo, sick behavior that you have from these people. Whether, again, this goes back to my initial point, whether or not you believe that Ed is innocent, that he did anything wrong, that he was a creep, that he wasn't a creep, that it was taken out of context, feel however you want to feel about him. I personally don't care. I'm going to leave that up to you to feel however you feel about the guy. But you got these people here who drove him to do what he did, who then have to make it about themselves all the time. And this is the tweet that she reposted saying, "It has always been really hard for women to come forward when men in our industry try to use their position in disgusting and coercive ways. This week, a dude made it 1,000 times harder. I feel like the call needs to be for the men in this industry to do the work that Piskor was unwilling to do." And again, it's just a sad reality that there are so many people that will accuse men of doing things that they didn't do. And unfortunately, it makes it a lot harder to believe the women that are actually victimized by these men. But it's like, what do you do in these situations? If 9 times out of 10, you can't necessarily believe the person, screaming victim, what do you do with that? It's just, this whole thing is just gigantic mess. And honestly, I would love for these Comicsgate people to stop fighting each other over it. I mean, literally, this has nothing to do with anybody really in Comicsgate. But I feel like all these previous tensions that were underlying are just making this whole thing worse. And this right here with Ed was just the catalyst that's just going to like make everything go haywire. But let me know what you guys think about all this. Maybe share your thoughts, because I'm sure a lot of you are more well-versed on the comics industry and a lot of these more independent comic artists. Again, I loosely follow these people on Twitter, but this is not my forte. Share your thoughts down below, and I will catch you guys later. Alright, and if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching the video. Thank you for being here. I do have 2 channels, Minimal Effort Podcast, as well as my gaming channel. I do have a Twitch and Kick for my gaming channel. We do live streams over there occasionally, maybe once a week. And then if you are in the market for a new PC, make sure to check out Meta PCs. Click the link I have down below. Use code TBO at checkout for a special discount. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time.